Hello, everybody. It looks like Paris is trying to join, so I'll take him. Oh, there he is. I was about to take you down until I saw your face. Welcome to the second episode of Congratulations, Dr. Cornel West and Dr. Melina Abdullah. As you know, that's the holding show until March 1st. But my screen is shaking. Can you all see me?
Yeah.
Okay, so my screen is shaking, but that's okay. Thank you for joining me. We're gonna pay some bills and get this out of the way. Okay, now it stopped. I'm like, okay. So as always, you can visit the website at cornelwest2024.com. You can still donate. Donations are still needed to shore up some debt that the campaign accumulated. That's the word I'm looking for. Here's something I never say. Subscribe to my channel. For some reason, I'm still stuck at 291. 300 was the goal by the end of November. I have 9. 9 people out there need to hear, need to subscribe. Wave your hand, Ashton, so I can know you're there. Okay, so you're not froze. Okay, so that was Paris. So subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my channel. Remember the Destroy the Duopoly Awards are it's gonna be December the 14th, 2024 at 6:00 p.m. I now have a blog. I haven't wrote an article yet. I'll do that tomorrow. But you can go look at my blog. It's on the Gmail one, the blogger, I guess that's what it's called. But you can definitely check that out. You can also support me on Patreon. Support starts at $2 per month. And I use all that to buy equipment, lighting, which I desperately need. So consider becoming a Patreon. And it's 98 days until the Justice is Here podcast debuts. March the 1st. Mark it down. We got 98 days to go until that wonderful, great podcast, which will be innovative, entertaining, educational, etc., etc., etc. is here. Also, you can now follow me at Blue Sky, which is kind of like Twitter. My sister talked me into this. So you can follow me at Blue Sky at hi, it's me, Tracy.bsky.social. Follow me there. Consider getting yourself an account. Remember, we're starting our 25 likes and our 15 shares. We're asking that 25 people like this podcast and 15 people share this podcast. And finally, we invite you all to comment. And we got our first comment coming from Jesse Paris, a.k.a. you know how to pronounce that. So, Jesse, hello. Thank you for checking in. Peace, Sister Tracy Carson, Paris Sherman, and Ashton Beavers from Denver, Colorado. Frontline Black News. Hello, hello, hello. Well, this won't be like last week. I will not be on Struggle Street this week. It wasn't good last week. Now Ashton is kind of going in and out. I don't know what's wrong with my Chromebook, but I hope I don't have to switch over to my MacBook. But yeah, I think there's something wrong with Paris's whatchamacallit. I'll let him know. So we're talking about housing. And so the idea of this show, until Justice is Here debuts, is to take some of the items that were outlined in the West Abdullah platform and discuss them in a longer format. And so I chose subjects. Last week, of course, we kicked it off with Medicare for All. This week, we're going to talk about housing, the housing crisis, why Congress refuses to act, and what it is we think the Justice for All party can do or will do to help address this issue, because it's at an all time, all hands on deck type of situation. I was reading a report that said we almost have 625,000 homeless people in this country. And that's absolutely abhorrent. It shouldn't be. But Ashton, how are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be on the show. And I think, oh, there's Paris. Okay. I think he was having trouble with the audio. Hopefully, you can hear us now.
Can
I
you?
I can hear you just fine now.
Okay, so again, everybody, we're talking and put your comments in the comment section. Y'all did really well last week, even though I was solo. Again, I don't like being so. I don't like it. I feel like that was a terrible episode. Um, because I'm by myself and I'm just like, ugh. But put your comments in there so we know that you're out there. So when we're thinking about housing, what do you see as like the major barrier to housing? Do you think it's Blackwater buying up properties and then just renting them at outrageous prices? Do you think it's cities um, paying developers to build apartments that are just not affordable? What there's so many parts of housing that we don't even address.
Yeah, for me, I mean, those are definitely factors. I mean, big conglomerates buying up all of the property and then jacking up the prices is not helpful. The other thing is you get certain housing they're just like really small studios. They're called apartments here in Seattle. They're just, I don't know, 210 square feet. These really, so they buy up these big properties and then they make these tiny apartments that are just not really good for I mean, especially not like a family, and they don't have an adequate uh, recreational facilities. So there's, and then of course hearing your neighbors is the biggest. Even if they could just invest money in, like, you know auto or soundproofing the walls, that would be something. But yeah, I think the biggest barrier would be a livable wage for sure, and access to jobs. um, and if we could get people to cover those bases, then housing should be an easier problem. But yeah, they keep building housing, and then they don't have the job growth along with that. So
Yeah, it's not only that they're building it where people can't afford to get in it, like you said, because the jobs that the people have won't pay for the apartments, because they're never single family homes. Let's get this straight. They're never single family homes. They're always apartments. They're always apartments. They're always communities. And you said it. I mean, you literally said it. If you can't afford, it's like they're building these unaffordable apartments on purpose. It's like they want people to be homeless on purpose.
Tracy, you asked the question, what's driving the number of unhoused people today as opposed to what we've experienced in the past? I'm not by any means a subject matter expert, so I can't speak with authority on this, but from my investigation and research, it comes down to the same tenets that we've always struggled with in this country. It's racism, it's misogyny, it's homophobic behaviors, it's capitalistic, which is what you had just addressed. Capitalistic is only a part of it. It is a major part, especially when you think about the private equity firms like Blackstone, BlackRock, and all the rest of them buying up these homes and putting people out of houses, what we call displacement, right? So there is a series of things going on at once. We can't be myopic about it. We have to see what is the comprehensive picture that we're looking at and understand that there are several prongs attacking people who are renting, who are buying. I mean, look at not just the eviction rate, not just the displacement rate, but also you have people who are who can't afford their rent because of gentrification, right? They're displaced. They can't afford their mortgage taxes. They can't afford all the other accoutrement that come along with those particular areas. So again, there are several things that are problematic causing the unhoused situation here in America.
And like I said, it just and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist person, but if you think about here in Indianapolis, I don't know whether this is true. Well, Paris, um, you live in Indiana like I do, but Carmel's a little bit different than Indianapolis. When I look at my city, I see our tax money going to these apartments that are supposedly low income, and the minimum income is like $1,800
Right.
for a one-bedroom apartment where you're expected to pay all the utilities. And then you think, well, I'll just buy a house. No, you can't buy a house because one, the interest rates are too high.
Mhm.
So what is it that we can do? Because it seems like politicians, the demo pubs, they literally aren't listening. They're just like, I don't care. Because it just seems like we're just in this losing battle. But if we don't do something, people are going, this is going to grow and grow and grow and grow, where you have people that are going to have to live, 4 and 5, 6, 2 or 3 families in like one house, or 2 or 3 people in one apartment. I wish I knew what could be done.
Well, when you understand what's happening at the level of government, specifically with what's going on with the presidency, you and I have had this conversation before, right? When we talked about Project 2025, there's some very specific language about what they want to do with America, specifically removing people from their property, removing people from their federal jobs, right? And that is so disconcerting. And as I said before, there's a confluence of events that are taking place. It's not one, it's not two. And if we're not willing and ready to address all of them, then we will be overwhelmed, which is exactly what's happened. Unfortunately, the unhoused problem in America has only gotten worse. More people faced unhoused or homelessness last year than in previous years before, right? And this is in spite of the moratorium that was in place around COVID, right? People weren't allowed to evict. However, there's what they call soft evictions, where you raise the rent to some astronomical and prohibitive amount, where you don't address some of the issues that are going on in the house, where you're harassing the renters. So there are several things that are going on. And Tracy, Dr. West talks about this all the time. We have to be willing to get out in the streets. We have to be willing to roll up our sleeves. We have to be willing to do what's uncomfortable and what hasn't been done since the 60s. Who wants to protest in that particular way anymore, especially when you look at Project 2025 and they're allowing the military, right, to interfere, to arrest, and probably even murder in the streets of America, American citizens. So those are things that we're all grappling with, but we have to understand that as the oppressed, the only way our voices can be raised and heard, we have to get in those streets. We have to let them know that we are not going to stop fighting. And Dr. West talks about this as well. It may cost some of us our lives, but what is our lives worth if we continue to serve under a fascist regime? Because
Yeah.
eventually we're going to lose those lives anyway.
Astrid,
So
you got some
go
things to
ahead.
say? You wanted to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, Bear's 100% right. I would say the capitalist aspect is definitely marginal and is also totally incoherent at this point for the reasons that Paris has outlined. It's, you can talk numbers all day and night, but if it's not talking about the social relation and the organization of your community in any coherent way, and then it just displaces and causes all this hardship, then it's virtually meaningless. So we really don't have these incentive structures as they even existed before. I mean, all of all these, it's economics and finance, these are not hard sciences. They, over the last 100 years, there's been some attempts to make it more scientific, but it's mostly at the expense of talking about how it affects communities. And that's why you would see something like gentrification. So if the community itself, has all of these houses, and they say, well, these are just the market rates. This is what some table says, and then the people there can't afford it. Then they would just have people from that in their social network or that have these jobs that could, you know, uh, so they could actually afford these properties. But it doesn't really validate. It's more of an ad hoc attempts to make it seem like there's still some pretense of an economic structure when at the end of the day, the community itself is suffering. And calling into question housing is so it's like, such a fundamental thing that should just go without saying. Housing as a human right seems, I don't know, obvious to me, but but I think it just comes down to this notion that jobs and housing and really any social organization is just serves to enact some kind of punitive measure. So you don't deserve housing because of XYZ, so we're gonna kick you out. Um, and the issue with that sort of is it's just cascading problems. I mean, if something so fundamental, you're immediately creating nothing but issues. And when you pair that with the fact that our society has become more atomized, I mean, it seems that the whole attempt is to just make us silo us all off so we don't have those social relations, and it's all this division. So so that they can just kind of pick us off one by one, which is, it's just the exact opposite of what we need right now. When you look at what's happening, I mean, the East Coast, when they talk about FEMA running out of money, and then what about their housing? Are all those people undeserving of how to what's the social projects to, rebuild? Do we say, oh well, you need to still clock in? And it's just, to your job. Like I remember seeing that one video of, people. It was just heartbreaking, of one of the people in that situation. It was described like that his managers wouldn't even let him leave the building, even though he knew it was flooding, and unfortunately it was a loss of life. And it's just completely, it's just because that they view jobs as a punitive. Like they think you're in this role because you're not, wealthy enough or intelligent enough. So they think that they can just, dehumanize, and it's just basically bullying. Especially, it's, I don't even know what the value statement is. Like you can't really do anything if you're always worried about where you're gonna, stay for the night. So.
And that's the thing that really perplexes me, because I'm like, don't you realize, like, these corporations should realize, hey, if people can afford to live in their places, they're probably going to be better employees if you pay them more so that they can afford. It's like, wait a minute, it feels like I'm always missing something in this discussion, because, like I said, my opinion is they're intentionally doing this, because you can't. Yeah, I know people miss me. I don't care, because you can't be this I hate to use this word, stupid. You cannot sit here and tell me that the rising homeless population is a good thing. You can't. You can't tell me. I was um, watching not a documentary, but like a video where people who work for Amazon, they couldn't even afford to live a place, so they would sleep in their cars, and then they would just go to work. That shouldn't be. Housing is a right. I mean, again, it trips my mind because I'm like, well, don't you realize if you reduced homelessness, if you made places affordable where people could actually afford them, we would be better off. And then I had to realize, no, that's the way they want it. Because they can just throw, I mean, look at the way that some of these laws are that you can't even camp. Like they're making it illegal to sleep on park benches. Well, where is that person supposed to go? Shelters are crowded. It's not like cities are built. I mean, they're so busy building cop cities when you would think, okay, well, this is a problem. Why don't we build more shelters? No, I know my city isn't. I'm like, why aren't you building shelters if you don't want people to sleep on park benches? If you want to make it illegal to give homeless people money, what do you expect people to do? And it, like I said, it just blows my mind because it's either you're A, extremely stupid, or B, you just don't give a care. And I'm leaning more towards B than A.
Well, if we look at this from a historical perspective, as opposed to an ahistorical perspective, we'll get our answers. What we're experiencing today dates back to the Gilded Age, when those who had only wanted more, right? They wanted other people's stuff, money. The problem with our government, who's supposed to protect us based on the Constitution, they've allowed this to happen without reprisal. They've allowed this to happen with sheer impunity. So when you do things like that, you're telling the perpetrator that their behavior is okay. And Tracy, you said you think it's on purpose. Well, exactly, it's on purpose. Because when you look at their record profits that they're growing year over year, it's not about us, it's about them and us, right? They're still recording record profits. They don't care about their employees. Like you said before, I come from Denver. In Denver, unfortunately, the workforce works in places they can't afford to live. You can't afford to live in Denver. It's just too prohibitive, right? It's too exorbitant, and that's the egregious nature. Um, Ashton, you were talking earlier about the divide and conquer. You know, Shinzu wrote the book, The Art of War. I repeat this all the time. Yes, that is a strategy that is used. It's an age old ancient strategy, right? It dates back to time antiquity. They've been doing this. And now, unfortunately, they've perfected the art of war here in America. So they do know how to keep us at each other's throats, right? As we tend to become divided, and we attack each other for whatever reason, right? Because you don't look like me, you don't think like me, you don't believe like me, and those are the unfortunate fears that they drum up, and that's what drives us because we're uneducated. And again, I repeat, we're uneducated. This system doesn't teach you how to think, it teaches you what to think. And I don't care if it's secondary or post secondary. We have too many people who have been taught how to think. I'm sorry, what to think and not how to think. So they're just aligning themselves as sycophants and paying obeisance to this cult of personality who's in place today. So unfortunately, we see, I mean, think about the people who voted for Trump, white women. You and I talked about this, Tracy. They have not changed their allegiance, even though they're voting against their own interest. Then we look at Mexican men who are now being woken up because, wait a minute, this guy is going to become the deporter in chief. I just read the other day where Texas is offering up 160,000 acre parcel of land for them to intern immigrants. And if we don't think that's another concentration camp, we've got another thing coming. We haven't even stopped to ask what happened to those children that Trump put into those camps before. No one's ever asked the question. It's never risen to a level of consciousness to where we're angry, to where we're frustrated, to where we're at our wits' end about it. We just buried it and forgot about it because we continue to be ahistorical. My point is this: they continue to do what they want to do. We continue to react. We're not proactive, we're reactive. And that's why we find ourselves in this situation today in America, 2024. Nothing is by accident. And when you study history, you'll find that these things have been done by design. Now, I'll tell you this real quick. The accident is when rights are won by the marginalized, by the disenfranchised. When we find some enfranchisement, that's the accident. That's why all the hard-fought victories that our people struggled for, segregation, right? Brown v. Board of Education was struck down. Well, in 1970s, Nixon appointed 3 Supreme Court justices that said this, quote unquote, you can look it up yourself: the Constitution has no rights ensconced within it, giving people the right to education. They struck down Brown v. Board of Education in the 70s. Affirmative action recently struck down. And how has that impacted us? Well, we see in those major universities the enrollment of African American and even Asian American students and enrollment declining drastically. It does have effect. Fair housing, right? When we look at all the things that we fought for, our people fought, bled, and died for. Voting Rights Act. Obama wins a second term in 2012. In 2013, they disemboweled, they gutted the Voting Rights Act, and therefore they made way for 2016 and 2024. There's no surprise. It's not an accident. They've been working on this, and they've been working on this, and we have been distracted because of the politics at our level.
I'm going to slightly disagree and ask
I
you,
love disagreement.
can come in with this. I agree with you for everything you said right up until we've been distracted. So let me tell you what I think of when I say the average person. See, the average person, in my opinion, we're distracted with things like, oh, I have to have a place to live. I have bills to pay. If my car breaks down, and which mine has, I don't have money to get my car fixed. So the distraction isn't at a political portion. The distraction is at a everyday living type of thing. You get people distracted in their own lives, it's gonna be hard for people to care about housing until it affects them, right? I mean, think about how, and I don't know if this is happening in Seattle, where people are standing in like at intersections asking for money, or how people are having children sell candy at the grocery stores. People are distracted. I agree, but I think they're distracted by, like I said, the basic needs like food, shelter, water, utilities, those type of things.
But isn't that commensurate to being distracted?
No, you can't do that with the big words. No, no.
What big word? What did I say? What?
You said commensurate. I don't know what that means.
Equal to.
Thank you.
It's comparable to, right? It's the same. The distraction is at every level. It doesn't make any difference if you're struggling, because most people, most of those white women who voted for Trump, they're not struggling with food and clothing and
But white
housing.
women
They're not
always
struggling with
voted. Right.
Maslow's. Hold on, let me finish. They're not
Okay.
struggling with Maslow's foundational need, right? That's not what they're struggling with. They're struggling with the politics of it all, because God forbid we allow abortion to affect other women, even though they first raised their voice um, after it was struck down. But we know when it came to actual voting, they voted against their own interest, and they have always done that. So again, it's at all levels, Tracy. It's not concentrated to one specific area or several things. They have attacked us. Like I said, it's a ghidra, a multi-headed monster. And if we don't understand how we're being attacked on every front we're being attacked on, then they'll continue to get away with it. Whether it's at the basic level of food, clothing, shelter, right? Or if it's at status and branding, whatever, because we see that at that level. I mean, people were so enamored with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake, you know, issue, right? That was a distraction. Football is a distraction. These same these same football teams come to your town and they insist on you subsidizing their team, their beautiful, elaborate stadiums. You can't afford breakfast, lunch, or dinner. You can't afford to think about how you're going to eat next week. You can't afford rent, but yet your taxes, your hard-earned money is going to house this football team, this basketball team, this hockey team, right? So they do it on so many fronts, and we need to decide. And this is one thing we've got to give the civil rights movement credit for. They sat down and they strategized. We need to talk about what our strategies are going to be and what is the youth strategy? What is the aged strategy? What is the middle class strategy? What is the impoverished strategy? And until we do come down and sit across from one another, Ashton, Tracy, and myself, and all those who are listening, and a whole lot more, until we decide that it's more important to come together than separate, segregate, compartmentalize, silo. When LBJ said in the 60s, if you give a white man someone to hate, you can pick his pocket and he won't even care. As a matter of fact, you don't have to pick his pocket, he'll give you his
Give it to
money.
you. Yep.
Right? And back then we know it was African Americans. Today it's immigrants. Before it was Muslims. Give them someone to hate and they'll do the job for you.
Right. Ashton, anything you want to add?
Well, I want to try to agree with both of you at the same time. I'm not sure, but I'll give it a shot.
We do ask you to say, Tracy, possible. You were right.
Yeah.
There, you were wrong, and then we'll just fine.
Well, so I mean, I'll be honest. I do, generally speaking, favor Tracy's position. I use the words survival mode. The establishment system puts us all into survival mode, but at the same time, I think Paris is also right in the fact that there are people who really do just want the distraction. Like they just don't have that recognition that, one, they are in survival mode, or they just don't want to get involved. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one of the biggest reasons that we saw at this last election cycle is both the paradigms, the Republican and the Democrat paradigm, are completely useless and totally divorced from anything that matters in politics. And so if people think that, oh, I have to attach myself to one team or another, and I have to say these things in this certain way, and then they start to realize that foundationally there's nothing valid about it, then they just run out of steam really fast, and then they just give up on politics, especially as it was said. I mean, they're just there isn't a discussion about what really matters. So if they don't hear anything about their housing situation, their wages, and I mean that the whole thing was sucked up by Project 2025, and it's it's important to focus on that, but with the caveat that, as Paris is saying, that there needs to be a strategy. And I get to circle back to the housing crisis. It's a real estate crisis here in Seattle, because down. I mean, this is every city, but with the pandemic, what had happened is everybody started working remote, and then people gave up all their leases for these big office spaces. So all of these office spaces are completely empty, and just serving absolutely no use case, or there's no utility at all. And this is everywhere. I mean, these are nice spaces. You could have business, you could have communities, you could do all kinds of things with it, but nobody could afford the rent for that. Only these big companies. And then you have Jeff Bezos moving to Florida because they raise the taxes on him a little bit, and then then Microsoft moves the facilities to another outside of Seattle, and all these kinds of macro dynamics that have some extreme effects. Then you just have a whole downtown that's there's just nobody there. And now the new CEO of Amazon is bringing everybody back. You got to work 5 days a week in person. Everybody's not happy about that. So it's just nobody, like the core problem is that the cities, they just throw a bunch of money into these huge skyscrapers that are effectively useless at performing any function, unless you want to just throw another $2 million in investment and upkeep. And then once you do that, you open the doors, then you're finding that there's just an unhoused crisis, and these people have nowhere to go. And then and the people that are supposed to be going downtown are just working remote and ordering everything online. So the commerce goes down, and it's become such a serious problem here that in Seattle, many businesses have closed. Some that I used to go to even just 5 years ago, they're gone. But there's also a place here in Seattle called it used to be called the Jungle. It's like where all of these housing encampments were, and because there were a few, there's a lot of crime there and all the rest of it. So they went in and they did this, what are called the sweeps, and they just get rid of all of these encampments. And then these people just have to wander throughout, the area, and they don't have these. No, I mean, they don't even allow them to keep their property. They'll just throw away even their medical equipment, and there's no, hey, here's some resources, you can go here to get a part of this program, to access housing, or get on this list. But you do this to people, and they're just desperate and wandering around to the point that they're starving and dehydrated. And then they come into the local businesses, they go into some restaurants, they're just trying to get free food, just use the bathroom. These are just basic things, and the small businesses can't really do that, because if they start giving out too much, then people think that they can go there and on a regular basis, and then it kind of becomes a mutual aid situation. And but these people just get the big point here is that they just start taking it out on the local businesses, and then those local businesses, they close down because they can't. They're not social workers. They're not supposed to be handling these people in crisis, and that's what's happening, is for absolutely no reason. I mean, these people are forced into crisis, and and then people have a big issue with the drug use, and clearly it's not a great thing, and it's most of the drugs that are available to these people are practically poison. But the thing is, it's like they're tired and they're just trying to get through the day. And you can kind of get into the mindset of, if I just do a little bit of this, then I can kind of get to the other side of town, maybe get to some kind of services that I want. And then then they're in some sort of crisis and then, paired with they're starving and they're out of water. So it's just, and this is all things that don't even need to happen, because you could at the very least provide like tent. I mean, they have tents. You can't just destroy their tents and all of the things that they claim. It's not the best situation, but it's better than them wandering around and sleeping on a bench. So it's like they can't sleep on a bench, they can't sleep in a tent, they can't sleep in a house. Like, what are they supposed to do? And they just have to have designated areas for this. And I think a lot of the problem is these social programs are intentionally underfunded, but at the state and the federal level, a lot of them are entirely dependent on federal funding. And so, when somebody like our new appointees come in and they're like, oh, we're going to cut the budget $2 trillion. What you're saying is that you're going to destroy these social services and make the problem several orders of magnitude worse for absolutely because it's a punitive thing. It's thinking of all of these things as things you could take away to incentivize somebody to work. But as we see with the productivity going up and up and up and the wages stagnating, there's no incentive there. So you can't get any, you don't get an increase in living standards from productivity. And I like to say, there are people are stupid, but not that stupid. Like some people, not everybody's stupid, but like the people that we classically think is stupid, are like that kind of fall into the corporate duopoly think. It's just they're just doing it out of expediency, and that was the big tactical problem of the election. Is Democrats thought that the Republicans were stupid, and they did all these talking points that, frankly, the conservative side has surpassed probably at least 20 years ago. So it's just they're kind of dated. So it's just if you really want to make that impact and communicate to that side of the aisle, you have to recognize that they evolve their positions like we all do, and then we're all knocked into survival mode, and it's increasingly more so especially during this next administration. So it's like Paris is saying, we got to get organized. We got to understand that it's like I say, it's just there's 3 people owning half of the wealth in the United States. That's not an economy. That's just some piece of paper that somebody scribbled something on. It has nothing to do with anything. There's no such thing as one person being worth $250 billion and then all of the rest of us worth next to nothing. That's not an economic model. It's not based on anything that makes any sense. And it's just kind of focusing again on the numbers, not the social relation. That is way more important. So
right. And here's the thing that I'm sorry, go ahead, Paris.
Well, there's several things that Ashton talked about I want to make sure I comment on. When you talk about the wealth redistribution to the top, we understand plutocracy, or the rule by the wealthy, and oligarchy, or in other words, crony capitalism, right? That's what's going on in this country. We used to point fingers at the Banana Republic back in the 70s because of the way they ruled the people, right? We are a Banana Republic. Number one. Number two, and Tracy, I'm going to say this, we become all too platitudinous. In other words, only thing we want to do is remark about people who are unhoused and struggling. They need to get a job. Well, statistics have shown 40 to 60% of them have a job, right? They're underemployed. They don't make enough money. Some of them are working 2 or 3 jobs and still don't make enough. As Dr. West talked about, their their check doesn't last as long as the month. And that's the unfortunate situation they find themselves in. So it's not about getting a job. It's about the types of jobs that are out there. And then again, we know that a lot of employers went to this part-time system, right, where they jimmy rig the system against the proletariat, right? You don't get benefits. So if something happens to you, God forbid, medically, you can't afford your medical expenses. Now what? Not only do you have to pay rent that you can't afford, on top of that, you have a health crisis that you can't afford to take care of. You know how many people avert or avoid going to the doctor just because they can't afford it?
You missed last week's episode.
You know what? I missed it, but I will tell you that's part of the crisis as well.
Right. And you know, there's a thing I noticed. Let me get to these comments before I make my point. Hello, Nelson. All they have to do is control the main media and the narrative to take away the focus from what is crucial and put it where they want. We need to stay focused and start getting people informed. 1000% agree. Jesse says they do destroy tents in the sweeps. Absolutely. Yes, they are purposely underfunded, and Michael wants a link. But Michael, I have my interview, so you'll have to go on there and, well, no, this one's already done. And when we won't have a show next week. But there's a couple of things I want to point out. One, minus Paris, because his mayor is a Republican. In most of the cities where this problem is just out of control, it's Democratic mayors. These are Republican mayors that where these are happening. Cities like New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta,
Denver.
These are not Republican. San Francisco, exactly. These are Republicans doing this. And this is why I push for people to join all the Justice for All parties that are forming across the nation, because the Democrats are so complicit in this, right? They'll run on, I'm going to build 3 million houses. No, you won't. Because if she had been elected president, that number would have got reduced by at least 80%. And then that number would have got reduced. You can't take money from BlackRock and then say you're going to build 3 million houses. It don't work like that. But you look at cities where this happened, like you said, we named all the cities. They're Democrats. They're democratically controlled cities. And when you call that out, it seems people are just like so abrasive, because it's like they don't think that the Democrats are a part of this. Jesse, I did read your above comment. But they think that the Democrats are somehow the lesser of two evils kind of thing. And another point I want to make separate from that, we in our city, we have a lot of strip malls that are just literally sitting there vacant. They're like nobody's in them. They're generating power and electricity and heat every month. They're getting heated. They're having plumbing. They could be inhabitable. If you're going to make it illegal for people, if you're going to make it illegal for people to live on park benches, Democratic mayors, because you're the ones that are signing this, why don't you take those strip malls and malls that aren't doing anything, convert them to housing, and then you solve the problem? If you're going to make it illegal, which is atrocious and wrong, you're saying that the Republicans are heartless, but so are you, right? Because the solution is so simple, but it's like either you don't want to do it because you're just like them, and that's what I think it is. You're just like them, and you want to run on this platform of we're here for the people. No, you're not. But when people or when advocates, I know in our city, a couple of years ago, somebody was like, hey, why don't we take this mall? I think it was Washington Square Mall, and convert it to housing for the homeless, because shelters were saying, we're running out of space. We can't house all these people. So why don't we take this, convert it? Oh, well, that's not a problem. What do you mean it's not a problem? People living on the streets is a problem. But it seems like these Democratic mayors are getting away with this and nobody's holding them accountable.
If I could comment on that, I would say that was, for me, that's this last election demonstrates that people just don't buy what the Democrats are selling at all, because and they have that, it's just fake. It's just they say all of these things and then it turns everyone off of what the leftist message is, because they just basically mimic what we would say and what we would do and try to act like they're about to do something similar, but they don't even get the language right. And then the general public and independents and conservatives see it's just smoke and mirrors, and that they don't go with it. And I think it would be really helpful if there was a recognition that there is no left in the Democratic Party, because they spent the entire election, knocking us out of the Democratic Party and making it impossible for us to, with the uncommitted movement, right? They just completely marginalized that and didn't do. There's just nothing leftist about it. So at the very least, Republicans could say, just instead of being like the far left, is like, no, what you're talking about is the Democrats at this point. But I did want to circle back to what Paris was saying about the healthcare aspect of it. It's not a job, like the foundation has to be, for me, for any of this to kind of come together. It's just the Medicare for all. Like it just has to happen, but as we just have to organize it some way. It doesn't matter what the capitalist balance sheets say or do. We just have to give that care in whatever way we can. And I know that's a big ask, but it shouldn't be tied to your employment or your productivity. Like, how are you going to get to work and be present if you don't have the mental health care, if you don't have the physical health care? You're probably going to be lethargic. You're going to be depressed. You're going to have all of these issues, and you're because you're not having your basic needs taken care of. And then you're facing all of this punitive measures at work because they're going to be labeled as lazy. But all of these jobs are basically excuses for the managerial class to bully everyone else around them and pretend that they've got any validity. But when you're undercutting the just the base, like these basic principles, I've never, most people want to like do work, at some point. First they need their health care taken care of, and then if that's all ready to go, then they want to do something. Nobody likes just sitting around all day, so they come.
Yes, they do. That's what Ted Cruz said. Ted Cruz said, if you get health care, you're just a fat, lazy person. I'm going to lock my dog in the house while I go to Cancun. But hey, whatever.
Right. And he gets the Cadillac version of healthcare, right?
And no money. Y'all missed last week's episode, except for Ashton. He was trying to tell me it was good. I'm like, bruh, no, it wasn't. It really wasn't. Bruh, it wasn't good. But I think it's like, part of me, I understand why this is happening, right? And I keep saying, the Justice for All Party, we need to really work on telling people, hey, they don't like you. They want to buy up your houses so that they can price it at $3,600 a month. I think when I was between buying a house, and thank goodness there was a community program where I could buy a house, because without it, there was no way I was going to be able to do it. But when I was looking to say, oh, well, maybe I'll just get a better apartment, because my neighbors above me had dogs. You're only supposed to have one dog. They had 3. But I just got tired of it. I said, okay, why don't I just look for an apartment? In Indianapolis, the city I've called home the majority of my life, the cheapest apartment was $1,500. $1,500. Plus, they wanted a deposit, which was, guess what? $1,500.
1 month's rent, yes.
Then the application fee was $100. Then they wanted a minimum credit score of 620, which I didn't have a problem with the 620. Well, I have a problem with using credit scores for housing. That's another discriminatory factor. But okay, I could have at least got that one part. I could have got that one thing I could have crossed. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. Why don't I just get a house? Now, if it wasn't for the program that I enrolled in, I'd have been looking at 20% down payment. Let's see, I paid $112 for the house I'm in now, which is incredibly cheap. Let me tell you something. I got my house dirt cheap. Considering what some people have paid for housing, I'm like, you pay how much a month? You pay how much? I'm hearing people telling me they paid $3,000, $2,000 a month. I'm like, what? A month? But interest rates haven't, they've been coming down, but they aren't anywhere where they were a few years ago. And people look at that. This is why the Democrats lost, that in Gaza, because I still keep saying Gaza. I don't know how many times we got to tell you. But people will, I'll give Trump credit for this. He knows how to get people stirred up, right? He can talk that populist language. Now, is he a populist? No, he is not. But the problem is people don't do enough research. They don't look at Elon Musk saying, I want people to return to work. For what reason? We're more productive at home. And that's because the people that buy those buildings, they're losing money. And he's got to make sure that his friends are taken care of. And while people are tired of the BS that the Democrats are proposing, good for you. Now we got to get them to be tired of the BS that the Republicans are selling and get them to come to us. We got to make sure that they know, hey, the Republicans are not for you either. That's just my thought.
Well, there's several things I wanted to comment on because the both of you have talked about some good things and brought up some good issues and thoughts. Number one, you talked about how hard it was for you to gain access to housing. What about our re-entry citizens?
Yes.
Right?
They can't even get apartments. Like if you have a record, you're not getting an apartment.
I'm just throwing that out there. What about our re-entry citizens, right? And here we elected a 34 count felon to the presidency, to the highest office in the land. Okay, just for perspective. The second thing I wanted to talk about was you were talking about earlier, there are no leftists. No, the mega vortex has sucked everyone to the right. Yes. The leftists have become centrist, right? When you look at Biden, he's no different than Reagan. And then there's no such thing as a Republican Party. It's a MAGA party. They're extremist. So it's not very hard for Trump to step into that particular place, that time, and be what he is and embody the supercilious behavior that is him and the MAGA department. I don't give him credit. He only tapped into what this country has always been. This country was founded on those principles, Tracy. We haven't changed. Like I said, the accident was when we were allowed certain rights. And when I said allowed, we didn't get those rights. We were allowed those rights. And the same ones who gave us those rights are showing us, oh, at any given time, we can take those rights back. And that's exactly what they have done. Someone talked about affirmative action not helping us. Well, it didn't do what it was intended to do, but we still had college admission rates higher than they were since affirmative action has been struck down. So it did some good. Did it do what it was designed to do? No, it was flawed from the very beginning. But guess what? What else did we have? We had nothing in its place. We didn't work on anything for 50 years to replace it or improve it. So shame on us. The third thing I wanted to talk about, we live in a capitalistic society. You better have capital if you're going to survive. And unfortunately, in this country, the prevailing minimum wage has remained stagnant for 15 years.
And a campaign didn't even address that.
Ours is the only one that did.
Yep. No, that's not actually true. Green Party said 25.
Okay, still, to your point, those prevailing, those the duopoly, none of them talked about this at all, right? And in addition to that, because you have to have money to rent, you have to have money to put a down payment on a house, you have to have money to pay mortgage, right? What about wage theft? When I have you working overtime and I'm not paying you, when I have you working part-time and I'm not paying benefits, right? And some people talk about, well, the law. Well, we understand the law, but we also have to talk about moral turpitude. When you can do that to another human being and justify your existence. Because again, they're still jumping out of corporate America with platinum parachutes. They're still realizing record profits year over year. Wall Street is not at all affected by this. They're still seeing growth, exponential growth year over year. So if we're not willing to address the fundamental issues in this country, then we're going to continue to see the same downward spiral. And Tracy, I talked to you a long time ago. You know, I do believe there's a point of no return. And listen, I believe this country has reached that point of no return. We'll never, ever experience what we once experienced. Remember, those victories that we won were hard fought and took centuries.
Sure did.
Wiped out over 20 years, gone, eviscerated.
Yep. I'm going to answer this question. We talked about universal health care last week. Today we're talking about housing. In 2 weeks. No, today we're talking about housing. I got 2 guests coming on talking about housing. I just realized that. What are we talking about today? Yeah, we're talking about housing today.
Yeah.
So I got 2. I have another guest talking about housing. Oh, well, you'll have another guest talking about housing in a couple of weeks. But I think the thing that we forget is, and I don't know how this can happen. You have companies like of course, we talk about BlackRock buying properties.
BlackRock, Blackstone's leading the private equity firms.
And nobody's thought to put a law against them. Like nobody sat here and thought, gee, that doesn't seem
You're making me laugh.
No, I'm being sarcastic.
I know you are. That's why I'm laughing.
I'm like, you think people living on the streets is a good thing? Like, how is that good for a society? You hear these politicians when they want to fund wars. We're the richest country in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is the richest country in the world having its vets live on the streets?
That's the real atrocity, right?
That at minimum. Not that I'm saying that everyone's housing is right. But if you're going to send soldiers over to these useless, baseless, corporate-induced wars, at least have the common sense to guarantee them housing when they come back, with no loans, with no credit scores required. But nope, we can't do that because we have the demo pubs, the uniparty system that says, you know what, I don't even care. Yes, I want you homeless. Yes, I want you on the streets. Yes, I'm going to put you in jail. Like, no, like we're just going to sit here and watch this happen. Like, we're just not going to do anything. We're going to go, okay, we'll just let all these people be homeless. No, that's not how the Justice for All Party works. And I think that's what we need to start. I don't know how we do it because I'm not anywhere near the brightest person on this subject. But that's what we need to do, is make a distinction. It's like, you need to be tired of voting for one party that purposely had 8 Democrats vote against a $15 minimum wage. It was on purpose. And then people defended it because they said, well, all the Republicans voted against it. They told you what they was going to do. The Republicans told you what they were going to do. Like it, hate it, miss me, bye. I don't care. They told you what they were going to do. They're telling you what they're going to do. My question to you out there watching is, what is your response going to be? Because not doing anything is not an option anymore. It's not.
That's what got us here, Tracy. That's what got us here. Hey, listen, I wanted to respond to one of the comments by Michael Pan, I believe it is.
Yes.
Tracy Ashton in Paris, America does not have universal health care due to racism and white supremacy. And I beg to differ. I'm going to diatribe that. As I stated earlier, LBJ stated unequivocally, univocally, that if you give a white person someone to hate, they will vote against their own interest.
Every single time.
When it came to health care, they were not going to let black people get something they don't deserve. They were not going to let migrants. They were not going to. They still talk about that. They don't pay taxes. Yes, it is racism. And I also said misogyny. I said homophobia, LGBTQ plus community, right? All the marginalized people. This country was founded on racism. We couldn't recognize black people as fully human. They were 3/5 of a human being. It took the 13th Amendment to address that. It was founded on making the indigenous people, and we can talk about that too, the indigenous people of no subsequence at all. Zero. Yeah. They weren't even human beings. And yet 64% of them voted for Trump. That to me boggles my mind. So go ahead, Tracy.
You know why that was? Because I said on the podcast I did. The Democrats did not want to win this election.
So Trump is the answer?
No, I'm not saying Trump is the answer, because it's a terrible answer, because I'm like, y'all should have just voted for Dr. Cornel West. But I'm saying the things that they did, right? No agenda, no platform, no plan, no anything except for Trump bad.
And I do think Kamala Harris ran a good campaign, better than Hillary. What we can't do is equivocate that. I think she did respectably. Again, you said it before. Certain people aren't going to vote for a black woman. There's just no way. That's not going to happen in America, and they proved it in 2024. If I have to vote against my own interest, I will prove who I support, and it's not a black woman. I think Kamala Harris did a very respectable job. She got the base excited. Again, when you prey on people's fears, and that's exactly what Trump is good at. That's what he's good at.
Oh yeah, he's an expert.
And lying. He will lie to you. I didn't say that. Well, we have you on video saying that just a day or two ago. And then the dude went a step further and brought in J.D. Vance. Let's talk about what this guy is in place for. Remember, in 2020, Pence chose not to do a certain thing. J.D. Vance will not have a problem.
Yeah, he said, I won't. I mean, he literally told you, but I think that's what the Justice for, if the Justice for All Party can't do a, hey, look, and Ashton, I promise I'm going to let you get in here and say something because you haven't said nothing for a while. No. But it's like, I wish people would realize, hey, these people, somebody said, why are we talking about things that happened hundreds of years ago? Because it affects today.
Right now.
Institutional slavery still affects people today in 2024. So that's
Prison
why we're
industrial
talking
complex.
about
Yeah.
things that happened that long ago. And we're going to keep talking about things that happened long ago because they have a definite effect on what's happening today. Here's what I will say, though, in terms of I'm going to finish my thought about me saying the Democrats don't want to win. You could have fooled me because I'm sitting here like, you had two jobs. You could have came out and said you wanted higher wages. You could have said, hey, we're going to stop spending your money overseas for wars. If you had just done that, you'd got a whole lot more. Yeah.
She still wouldn't have won. Again, I didn't say she ran a perfect campaign. I said she ran a good campaign. When you compare her to the Hillary Clinton, it wasn't about
But Hillary won the
Kamala.
popular vote.
What we can't do is lay it at the feet of Kamala Harris. I think she did a respectable job. What we have to accept is the country that we have all inherited. And if we can't do that, then we're going to continue to spiral down this continuum and never realize what has happened to us until it is too late, which I believe in some respects it's too late. You know, I share with you all the time, Tracy, that book. They thought they were free, Epsilus or ... until it was too late. It's about Milton Mayer, who was this Jewish person, went over to Nazi Germany after it failed, and he wanted to ask questions of the proletariat. What happened? How could you let this happen? And they explained to him in painstaking detail. It wasn't overnight. It was a bit here, it was a bit there. You saw something done, you heard something that just didn't sit right, but either some bromidic apology was accepted or something worse took place. Trump was a suspect or in danger of being assassinated, not once but twice. Come on, man. Come on. And as again, I'm going to cite that error because I think that's the epoch we're looking at right now. When Goebbels said, if you tell a lie big enough and you repeat it over and over again, they will believe you. And that's what's happened in this country. They believed the lie. How many people were up in arms because the 2020 election was stolen? No evidence was ever produced. Over 60 courts threw it out.
61.
Right? Over 60, right?
Oh, yeah, you did say over 60. Sorry.
Yes. But yet the big lie captured the imagination of so many people in this country. And then, hey, listen, black folks, I'm like you. They're treating me just like you. Look at my photo.
But I've heard black people say that. But I told Ashton I was going to let him talk. Ashton, we done kept you
Ashton,
at this
go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
Not that black people fell for it, but that was one of the lies they told. Go ahead, Ashton.
Well, I just wanted to circle back to what Bear said when he was talking about the fact that we hired a felon and the fact that it's nearly impossible for people who have been incarcerated to find housing. This is one of these, you know, we're not even living in a double world or two different worlds. We're living in just the multiplicitous, truths at this point that it's really easy to get bewildered because at that you one positive you could say is like, okay, now you understand some kind of level of path to redemption, right? So we could say, okay, he had these felonies, but he still became president. So does that level of is that translate to everybody else who's been through the incarcerated system? Do they get to finally be demons and all this? But I mean, we know that it won't, but I at some formal, like, even at a rhetorical level, something has to happen. I kind of feel like the 2020, the notion that the election was stolen and the fact that Trump became president again, I've seen the analysis that people just don't believe. Oh wait, I guess Vladimir Putin said that that the American people don't believe that that in the judicial system at this point. I think of course he's saying that in his duplicitous way, but I think it's true that the American people just don't believe in the judicial system because they've, I mean, it's the largest incarcerated population of the world, all the rest of it. So, it's just getting like your foot in the door with these kinds of things. Like these systems are completely and totally broken. And so when the Democrats, try to make it sound like, oh, we're doing all these great things for you, it's factually false. And the advantageous part of the conservatives is they say to your face, we're never going to do anything for you, and we don't think of you in any capacity that's positive. So, you have to. There has to be like a realist recognition, and from the left, we have to understand just how broken. Like, what can we salvage from all of this, these paradigms, and how can we make it actually affect people on the ground? I mean, for me, we all have all this discussion about automation and AI and all this. It's like, why can't we just automate the process of people finding housing? How much of this automation of, the healthcare, people automatically getting healthcare? Like how much automation can happen while still, preserving the jobs in these sectors? But it's just these ideas that once you're an incarcerated person, once you have that label, you're not able to integrate into society, and that puts that weight. I mean, these people understand that that's how they're going to be presented. So if they have when their only interactions with state institution or federal institutions is always negative, because that always prohibits them from accessing essential services, it's just going to create all this anger and frustration. And like I said, they just take it out on the first person they see, because they see us as not as complicit, not helping them out, not understanding how big of a burden, and that weight is still on their shoulders. And it's just, there has to be some kind of closure with it's just, the conservative system is supposed to be it's just a closed system where you know what's going to happen. You do these X, Y, Z, you're getting the death penalty, all this. But the democratic system is more of an open system where there's just a lot of loose ends, and people just get lost in that, and they don't have that closure that they need and especially whenever, this is kind of this abstract ideological closure. And then how does that affect them at the state level and the local level to access the, I mean, I can't even keep track of it. It's confusing. So I did try to, just for perspective on livable wages, I was trying to figure out the numbers. So like in the United States, a lot of these figures were given like per month. So if I calculated out for like a $40, like at $7.25 an hour, 40 hours a week, you got $1,160 a month. And in Israel, it's $1,586 a month. In Palestine, that's a little harder to find the information, but it's like set out from 2022, $507 a month. In Russia, it's $210 a month. And in Ukraine, it's $193 a month. So there's just these extreme disparities. And one of the ways that you could actually demonstrate that you care about, Ukraine, or the Democrats say that they do, is maybe double the livable wage there. Can we do that internationally? But no, they've just got to continue this war indefinitely without any actual positive thing on the ground. It's like we're always caught in this ethical, moral space, but there's no resolution. And then the thing that could actually impact people in a material way, like a livable wage at the very least, is not even advocated for. It's not even within the domain of permissible things to talk about. So
Yep. And I guys, this has been what's going on over here in the comment section? I'm just like, okay, they having real deep discussions in the comment section, and I'm not gonna highlight them all, but why I chose housing as a person that on several occasions was houseless. Like there was a point I was living in my car and I was working. Well, no, I wasn't working, but I found a job. If it wasn't for just sheer be connecting to somebody that knew a shelter where I could stay, I would probably still be in that same car, in that same position. There's no guarantee under, people will say, oh, it'd be better if Kamala won. I contend she wasn't going to be no cakewalk either. We know Trump is terrible. But what we got to say is, you know what? She's terrible too. What makes people think that she was going to be so great on issues she never brought up? Yes, she said she was going to build 3 million houses, but you're taking money from BlackRock. For real? Come on now. You knew good well you wasn't going to build no 3 million houses, just like you stood in the way of $15 minimum wage, just like you're standing in need of things that we need. And so I want to talk about these issues because I think this is where the Justice for All Party can make a significant difference, is to educate the public like, hey, neither one of these people, they don't like you. They want to make sure that you are poor, you stay poor, you're going to not have enough to eat. They don't care. They'll raise your taxes. They'll fund Israel up to the gazillionth time. They'll talk about war with Iran. Sorry, I didn't even know Iran did something to us. I'm sitting here like, what the heck Iran do to us? I don't even know. But now you hear that being talked about. That money is coming from your depleted income. And I think that's a part of the reason that Trump won. Do I agree with Trump winning? No. Did I want to win? Absolutely not. But I think when the economy is in the state that it's in, and grocery prices are so high, people are like, you know what? Somebody's got the administration in power, which she was a part of, is going to get the blame for that. But like I said, I'm not putting up everything in this comment sections. But it's, yeah, if you don't know what it's like to have to go to a bathroom to wash up in public, I don't wish that on anybody. And I think that's why it makes me so frustrated that in these Democratic held cities that it's illegal, like in Indianapolis, it's illegal to give homeless people money. What? You aren't building any shelters. You're building, like, there's at least 15 new apartment complexes that are still empty. They're built, but is anybody living in them? No. I wouldn't wish living out of a car on Trump. Like, the person that I like the least, and y'all know I'm not a chauffeur, I don't wish that on anybody. It is horrible to wake up or be told by the police you can't sleep there, and to find a place to park so you can sleep. And thank goodness I don't have children, but there's mothers and fathers that are doing that with their children. Is that child getting access to education? Probably not. So we have to really think about this, and we have to start educating the public like, hey, this is an issue. And like I said, the time for not doing anything, that's done. That's overdone with, because if we don't do something, it's going to be worse. And it'll be one of us coming back here saying, hey, I had to live in my car because of, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. Because I know what it's like. It's not pleasant. It's not, like I said, my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. thankful to be where I'm at. Trust me, because I got a roof over my head. My car's in the shop, but I'm doing good. But I want to make sure that somebody else doesn't have to experience that. And that's why I'm doing this, to kind of get us over to making a difference, because I believe that the Justice for All Party can do that. But that's just my thoughts. Any last thoughts that you guys have?
Yeah, I don't know who this Michael Pan is, but he keeps putting information in there that's antithetical to everything we're talking about. The last question: do we believe that blacks do better in the South? And when you look at the education,
I said I wasn't going to
Miss,
highlight everything. Go
I'm
ahead.
not saying everything. I'm making one specific point, Tracy, because I want to
Okay.
deal with this person who continues to say things that are antithetical to what we're talking about. When you look at the South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, they have the worst education system in the entire country. Blacks do not do well in the South. And when you look at the unemployment rates, blacks do not do well in the South. So I don't know why you keep going with these tired tropes, but I'm here to let you know that we do not do better in the South, and we never have done better except right after Civil War during Reconstruction. And that was a very truncated period of time, and it was over within 7 years. And
Yep.
then the KKK, and then Jim Crow.
And then whatever we're in now. The whole country is racist. They made it that, Jesse. I would say a good idea, since we have a bigger population in the South. We also have our own party in the South called the Muhalai Party. Yeah, like I said, I saw some of those comments. I'm like, no, not going. And they may be on the thing. But essentially, I'm tired of the Democrats. Like, I don't care about the Republican Party, I guess, because they never pretended to be for me, right? They never lied to me and said, we're for health care, and then gave us the Affordable Care Act. They never said, hey, we're for reparations, but Congress has to pass it first. They don't lie to me. The Democrats have lied to people, and that's a good portion of why Trump, I think, won. Not because he's better. He's far worse. 34-time
Worse.
convicted felon.
Yeah.
He's worse. But
Rapist.
when you do nothing, when you stand for nothing, when you fund wars, when the homeless when you can't go to the grocery store and buy groceries, somebody gonna pay for it. And a majority of the people stay home. No, we're not gonna talk about Phil Scott. But again, everybody.
Hey, just real quick, Tracy, you said one more thing. Tracy, one more
Yes.
thing. Remember, Trump just made an announcement. He nominated his first African American cabinet member. And if you haven't read up on Scott Turner, you better read up on Scott Turner, because he's replacing Ben Carson, who held the HUD position the last regime.
You know,
And he had a reputation as remaining feckless, right? The status quo was good enough for Ben Carson, which means we, as a marginal people everywhere, women, LGBTQ, Mexican Americans, indigenous people, remained disenfranchised. And this guy will continue to hold that particular line.
yeah. And I'm not gonna keep on asking why the HUD secretary always gotta be black. Why?
Because that's a black job. That's a black job.
I'm like, what? But you know what? If Dr. West had became president, not only would I have called all my friends that voted for Democrats and said, "Ha ha." See, God knew what he was doing, because he knew I was gonna keep it petty. I was gonna go to the petty card. Like, look, Dr. West, don't make the HUD secretary black. Anything, anything else, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Education, but just not HUD. I can't name a non-black person that's ever been over. I'm like, well, that's just a point of contention. But I want to thank everybody. Again, you guys are on it with these. Thank you. Comments. Like I said, we're going to keep these discussions going on certain subjects, but there will not be a show next Saturday. Next Saturday is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I will do my 4 o'clock show. And I'll tell you now what it is, just and nobody laugh. I'm gonna rank the challenge of the Super Friends characters. That's what I'm gonna do. No. I'm gonna talk about Thanksgiving sides. Yep, that's gonna be the Saturday show at 4, but there will not be a 7 o'clock show. We're gonna pick it up on December the 1st, which is a Sunday, because the person that wanted to be on, she can only be on Sundays. And I'm like, okay, that's fine with me. And we'll still have a Saturday show and then take it out the year. So remember, everybody, subscribe to this page. I'm this many, I can't put my fingers up, but I am nine away from 300. 9. I was supposed to have 300 by the end of November, and November gonna end next week. 9. That's all I need is 9 for 300. Remember that the Justice for a Hero podcast is 98 days away. I think you guys are going to really love what I have in mind for that show. You'll be very pleased with it. So far, what I have planned is working out exactly the way I wanted to. So keep in mind that it's 98 days to go. The Defeat the Duopoly Awards are December the 14th. I'll probably do the best of 2025, and Paris just left, but that's okay. Ashton, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I guess I should qualify what I said earlier. I think, conservatives, the Democratic Party is basically, it's like Paris was saying, is like we have two right-wing extremist parties. So they have the pretense of, all this accepting and everything, but they're just as conservative. So that's the other thing that's just a complete, this,
What do we lose, though?
It's just ridiculous. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was I worked this job where I talked with the coworkers, and I found that most of the managers and a lot of the crew had been homeless, and it just brought more weight to that fact that how bad the situation is. It's here in Seattle, everywhere, and these people that have every right to be frustrated, and then they have to work these jobs that treat them terribly, and so we all end up kind of bringing the wrong energy into the one space that we all have in common. And it could have just, if you knew that these people were struggling in this way, you could do so much more, to help alleviate that. But they put us in these competitive frames of mind and try to, make us just so exhausted that we can't, bring the right energy to work when these jobs are not even what anybody wants to do. We just kind of have to do it. So in my mind, these kinds of jobs only exist because they force everyone into these situations and don't provide housing. So they feel like they have to have these jobs, and then they treat them horribly. It's just compounding disasters that have no relation to commerce or capital or any. It's just bullying, basically. And these people need, everybody needs to have a sense of community. And it doesn't matter what your past, your history, or what your personal life is. What you come into, this public space, you're part of the community, and you need to have your needs met. And, we have to do that through organization. They keep trying to pass that bill. I think it was 1149, where they're trying to be completely make it possible for Trump to just destroy any nonprofit that is not a Zionist organization. So, and we need all these social organizations, because that's clearly the capital motive of production? Is it working? So we need more of a volunteer sort of structure so that people can organize, so that people can find a sense of community. So they're attacking us on all sides, but the American people are fed up. And if they're not fed up, they're going to hit one of these crises pretty soon, and then they're going to be fed up. And then we just have to organize after that and demonstrate that none of what we're seeing in the media has anything to do with what people are experiencing on the ground. So, and
that's a good point, Ashton. I still don't believe in the American experiment. We have allowed this country to de-evolve into what it has become today. I have traveled overseas, and they are in shock that we've allowed this guy to become president the first time, and now he is a second-term president, because the majority of Americans who are registered voted for him. Now, it is going to meet them at their door. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of when. And I'll leave us with this. Niemöller, again, Nazi Germany, said this. And when you go through the Holocaust Museum, at the end, you'll see this great big sign that says exactly what he stated. It quotes him. First, they came for the trade unionist, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the communist. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the Jew. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up. When will they come to their door is a matter of time. Can this country afford to wait that long? We're in dire straits right now.
Yep. And final word, like I said, there are justice for all parties forming all across the nation. If you are interested in joining in your state, definitely be on the lookout for that. You can still go to the Cornel West 2024.com website, contact the state league. They should have information about that. Remember, because I thought we were finished, but let me go back to that little link there so I can tell you where you can find this show besides watching here. I just had it. Follow me at Blue Sky at hi, it's me, Tracy.bsky.social. It's my sister talked me into getting this. She said it's nothing like Twitter, so you won't find the KKK there. And I was like, I'm cool with that because that's what Twitter has basically become. And I'm like tired of it. So I said, okay, I'll go here. You'll find a link to this page here. Remember, there will not be this show next Saturday will not air. Instead, we will come on December the 1st. That's a Sunday. I know it's a different show, but it'll still be at 7 p.m. Because the guest who I have, she wanted to come, but she couldn't be on Saturday because she works. And so I'm able to make myself flexible. If you are interested, again, in joining the Justice for All Party, go to the platform section of CornelWest2024.com. You can read all the platform portions. Like I said, the point of this second iteration of the podcast is to kind of talk about those issues until we hit the Justice is Here podcast in March. We're 98 days away. So we'll be looking forward to interviewing people all across the country. I'm going to take everybody down. Thank you. Subscribe. I can say that now with a clear conscience because the election is over and y'all should have voted for Dr. West, but I'm trying not to be petty because I'm like, he was clearly the best choice, but hey, that's just my opinion. But thank you, Ashton. Thank you, Paris. I'm going to take everybody down. If you guys want to just go off, that's fine. I'm going to play the outro and we'll see you all Sunday. Backtrack that. We'll see you Tuesday. I'll have a Tuesday show. I am doing a Tuesday show. So be sure to tune in for the Tuesday show. If you're my subscriber, you'll get a notification. But I will have a show Tuesday. Then I won't have one Saturday. And then we'll just go from there. And then we'll just finish up the year. So
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. I didn't want to say that because, some people refuse to celebrate Thanksgiving because of its origin. So I'm like,
we understand but you can still be thankful for your family. You can still be thankful for things. We don't celebrate or commemorate the origins because we know how they raped and pillaged this land at the expense of indigenous people.
I know.
But happy Thanksgiving anyway.
Yep. So, Tobias, thank you. Lynette, I haven't talked to you in a minute. How are you doing? I'm so glad you came in. Everybody, I'll see you when I see you. Thank you for watching. I'm going to do the outro, and we'll see you all when we see you.